Today we are tackling a thesis that, I have to say, feels so audacious. It sounds like something ripped from a utopian future.
It does.
And yet, all the research we've analyzed suggests it's just a matter of, well, technological and economic inevitability. We were talking about the end of the line for the smartphone.
For the device that really defines modern life.
Exactly.
It sounds like hyperbole, doesn't it? But if you really look at the fundamental constraints, the pressures that created the smartphone era in the first place, you realize those same forces are now. They're building up against the smartphone itself.
So the very thing that made it necessary is now making it obsolete.
Precisely. The core argument in our sources is that the device we all rely on most is approaching functional obsolescence, and the agent of its demise is sophisticated ambient AI. Screens might feel necessary, but the AI revolution is really poised to free us from what one of our sources called their merciless tyranny.
Okay, so our mission today is to dive into the research that's predicting AI will kill the screen. Not just shrink it, not just change it, but kill it entirely.
Right, shifting us from this hands-on, two-dimensional interaction to something completely different.
An environment defined by voice, by ambient computing, by spatial computing. We need to get our heads around not just what replaces the phone, but why this shift is, as some analysts have put it, a mathematical certainty.
And to really set the stage for that, we have to internalize the pressure, the unsustainable pressure the smartphone has put on the most expensive resource on Earth.
Human attention.
Human attention.
And this is where the data is it's truly shocking. It's the foundational constraint that guarantees this change is coming. Consider this statistic, and this is based on average global use. The average person checks their phone a staggering 144 times a day.
144.
That means roughly once every 7.5 minutes of your waking life, you are pulling your brain out of whatever it was you were doing.
And that's not just a quick, harmless check. It's not like just glancing at your watch. When a knowledge worker, or really anyone, loses focus because of that interruption, that quick glance at a notification, you don't just lose the 30 seconds you spent looking at the phone. You lose approximately 23 minutes of focused time before you can fully regain your concentration.
23 minutes? That's just staggering.
Yeah.
I mean, if you check your phone 5 times in a morning, you could have lost nearly 2 hours of deep work just from recovering from the interruptions.
And this isn't some personal failing, right? This isn't about willpower. It's a massive, quantifiable economic drain.
Yeah.
When you calculate the cumulative loss of productivity, the errors, the decrease in quality of work.
The stress.
The stress, absolutely. The cost of all that friction imposed by the screen is costing the global economy an estimated $650 billion annually.
Wow.
That level of cost, that level of biological friction, that's the pressure cooker. That's what's demanding an escape route.
Okay, let's unpack this. To really get why the death of the smartphone isn't just a possibility, but a certainty, we have to look back. We have to look at the pattern that brought the phone into existence in the first place.
It's something our sources call the constraint curve analysis.
This constraint curve.
Right. Every major technological shift, the ones that fundamentally alter how we interact with information, it follows this predictable 3-step pattern. And the key is figuring out where we are on that curve right now.
So step 1 is always that the pressure, both economic and technological, it builds to an unsustainable breaking point.
Exactly. And if we look back 2 decades, say to 2004, that pressure was immense. People were literally weighed down by gadgets. You had your flip phone,
your iPod for music, a separate Garmin GPS unit for your car,
a clunky digital camera. You were managing 4 or 5 different devices, each with its own charger, its own interface. It was a mess.
And that mess, that technological sprawl, it leads directly to step 2.
Which is that the existing infrastructure fails to handle the stress. In the early 2000s, consumers just hit a ceiling, a complexity ceiling. You ran out of pocket space.
And mental bandwidth.
And mental bandwidth, absolutely. And crucially, the wireless networks back then, they were built for voice calls and maybe a slow text message. They were completely inadequate for the data-hungry things we were starting to want, like streaming music or looking at a map.
Which brings us to step 3.
New technology rushes in. A new technology comes in to fill that void. And this isn't just about a clever idea, it's a solution that the math demands.
So when the iPhone arrived, it wasn't just that it was a cool new gadget.
No. It solved the pressure, it unified all those functions, it tapped into the new 3G networks, and it gave us a simple single interface. That's why its growth was so explosive. It wasn't just a cool invention, it was a mathematical certainty.
Okay, so here's the pivot. If we take that same curve, that same three-step pattern, and apply it to today,
The sources argue the smartphone has now hit its own limits. But this time, they're not just physical, they're biological and economic limits.
the cost of the screen-based interaction, that loss of focus, that constant interruption, that $650 billion drag on the economy.
That is the new infrastructure that's failing. The benefit of having information in your pocket is now being overwhelmed by the measurable cost of chronic distraction.
Which brings us to the human side of this, the cognitive cost of screens. We have to talk about context switching.
It's a technical term from computing, but it applies so perfectly to the human brain. In a computer's operating system, when you switch tasks, the system has to save the complete state of one application.
Like where it was, what it was doing.
Exactly. All the variables, its goals. It stores all that before it can restore the state of another task and let it run.
And when you apply that to us, it's like stopping work on a complex financial report to check an email about,
Yeah.
a non-urgent meeting.
Right. And then you have to try and restore that whole complex state of the report in your mind when you come back 5 minutes later.
And we're terrible at that.
Notoriously inefficient. This switching incurs a massive cognitive overhead. You don't just lose the 5 minutes you spent on the email. You spend real time just figuring out, okay, where was I? What was the next step?
It's the attention tax, and the research shows it's so much steeper than we realize. After even a brief digital distraction, it can take up to 23 minutes to get back into that state of deep focus you were in before.
23 minutes, and the cumulative effect is just devastating. Studies show these little mental blocks, this recovery time, can consume up to 40% of a person's productive time in a day.
40%.
That's why the screen is so biologically constraining. It's asking our brains to do something they're fundamentally bad at over and over and over again, all day long.
And the really crucial part here is that this isn't an accident.
Not at all.
Our digital tools, our apps, they are engineered to make this problem worse. Notifications, infinite scroll, those little red bubbles.
They're all designed to cater to the brain's deep-seated craving for unpredictable novelty. That little ping stimulates dopamine. It locks you into a cycle of interruption and reward. The device isn't just a tool, it's a slot machine for your attention.
Meanwhile, the physical screens themselves have reached a point of saturation.
Yeah, we've seen amazing innovation. We went from LCDs to OLEDs to these foldable POLEDs, dynamic AMOLEDs. They get thinner, brighter, more vibrant every year.
But the physical reality is that the screen can only get so big before you can't hold it. Multitasking on a handheld device has reached its physical limits. You can split the screen, sure, but you're still looking at a 5 or 6 inch display.
And this refinement might actually be the final, most optimized version of the technology right before it dies.
What do you mean?
Well, think about micro-LED. It's seen as the ultimate future display tech. It has all the benefits of OLED, perfect blacks, vibrant colors, but without burn-in and with a much longer lifespan. It's basically the best screen we could possibly imagine creating.
Okay.
But this peak of screen technology is arriving at the exact moment the interface itself is about to become obsolete.
What's fascinating here is the core constraint then. The screen is perfected, but the problem is we still have to touch it and look at it every 7 minutes.
Exactly. The fact that these displays, these technological marvels, are now so distracting that they are costing the global economy $650 billion, that's a massive constraint. It demands a change in the interface layer.
So the next step isn't better hardware.
The next step is invisibility.
So if the smartphone has to give way to these biological and economic pressures, what comes next? What are its successors?
Our sources all point toward two intertwined concepts that represent this new interface layer. They are ambient computing and spatial computing.
And the big philosophical shift here is that we're moving away from a fixed, handheld, glowing screen.
Right. Let's start with the background layer. Ambient computing. Some people call it ubiquitous computing. It's technology that operates completely seamlessly in the background.
It's embedded in the walls, in the objects around you.
Exactly. And the crucial part is that it responds to you intuitively without you having to do some direct learned action. So think voice commands, gesture recognition, or just predictive automation based on what it senses.
It's the technology just disappearing into the environment. It doesn't ask for your attention. It waits for your intent.
That's a perfect way to put it. And then there's spatial computing. This takes that ambient intelligence and it blends digital content directly with your physical space. It lets you interact with information in 3 dimensions.
So the most obvious example right now would be something like the Apple Vision Pro, right? Where digital documents or screens appear anchored in your living room, respecting the light and the physics of the space.
Yes. And the ultimate goal of this whole shift, as our sources really emphasize, is a kind of liberation. It's about freeing us from the merciless tyranny of the glowing display and getting back to more natural human behaviors.
So describe that future scenario. What does that day look like?
You wake up, and instead of grabbing your phone from the nightstand, you might activate some wearables, maybe some glasses, and you just start interacting with inanimate objects through conversation.
You could perform, I don't know, a fluid Minority Report style gesture in the air to move a file.
Or just blink or spook to activate a command. Tasks just get done without you ever touching a smartphone.
We've already seen the early, maybe clumsy versions of this with Siri and Google Assistant.
Very clumsy, yes. But they do allow you to control devices, execute some basic tasks with your voice. They're the first limited examples of this invisible interface.
But the sources seem pretty clear that the primary successor hardware, the thing that will bridge ambient and spatial computing, is going to be advanced AR glasses.
Absolutely. These devices give you hands-free, always-on access to contextually relevant information right in your field of view. They blend the digital and physical worlds into a single, cohesive layer.
Now, for a long time, the biggest hurdle here was just miniaturization. The early AR glasses looked clunky and ridiculous.
They did, but our sources confirm that that key technical hurdle, making the display component small enough so the eyewear looks normal, that's been cleared.
And the breakthrough was something called waveguide lenses.
Waveguide lenses, exactly. The simple way to think about it is, it's a sophisticated, clear piece of glass that acts like a projection system. It uses these tiny optical elements to beam an image from a hidden projector, usually by your temple, directly onto your retina.
So the lens itself stays thin and clear and light.
Which makes the form factor finally viable for everyday wear. We're past the is it possible phase. We're seeing commercial products now.
Like the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, which are mostly display-free AI glasses, but also more advanced things like Raw Kids AR glasses. It's happening now.
And that consumer acceptance is just accelerating the R&D across the entire industry. The major tech players are not waiting. They are actively building the post-smartphone operating system right now.
And it's interesting to look at the different strategies here between, say, Apple and Google.
Very different. Apple is clearly betting on a unified, high-end ecosystem. It's all centered around the Apple Vision Pro and the intelligence that runs through it, which they call Apple Intelligence.
And Apple Intelligence is built into all their stuff, iPhone, iPad, Mac. But its greatest synergy is with the Vision Pro.
Right. It's focused on communication, productivity. So you have powerful writing tools, it prioritizes your notifications, and it has this visual intelligence. You can ask it questions about the contents of your fridge because its camera just saw it.
And the spatial part is key. The Mac Virtual Display feature in Vision Pro lets you pull your Mac screen into the headset and create this massive, curved display.
It's like having 2 5K monitors floating in your room. You arrange your apps in 3D space. It's about making information live in your environment, not trapped behind glass.
So that's Apple's very integrated, very high-end approach. How does that contrast with Google's strategy?
Google is way more distributed. They're pursuing a portfolio approach. They are not betting everything on a single expensive device like the Vision Pro.
Their philosophy seems to be that it's just too early to know which device will win.
Exactly. One of their execs said it's too early to have conviction because the AI is moving so fast. So their strategy is to maximize the intelligence in the devices people already have, Android phones, smart clocks, cars, while they experiment with new things through their Android XR platform.
So the goal isn't to sell one device, it's to embed Gemini AI across everything.
Right. To turn Android from a mobile OS into a spatial operating system. So Google owns that interface layer, whether you're using a phone, a smart display, your car windshield, or some future lightweight glasses.
So it's a repeat of their strategy from 15 years ago to dominate the mobile OS market through ubiquity.
A classic repeat. And this whole shift to ambient computing really hinges on one crucial design insight that came out of Google's own research. The future technology already exists, but it's tragically disconnected.
We have all the puzzle pieces, but the picture isn't assembled.
That's it. Google's research points out that the three smart devices you need for a magical experience, say a smart clock, smart blinds, and a smart coffee machine, they're all widely available and pretty affordable, but they don't talk to each other.
So your smart clock wakes you up, but then you still have to open an app for the blinds and then push a button on the coffee maker. You've just replaced one screen interaction with three.
Yes, the synergistic value, the magic, it only comes when those parts are connected by an invisible, proactive AI. When the AI knows your morning routine, and the alarm triggers the blinds to go up 10%, which triggers the coffee machine to start brewing.
So the future isn't about inventing one new amazing gizmo.
No, it's about seamlessly linking the pieces we already have using an invisible intelligence layer. That's the definition of ambient.
Okay, so when we move to this screenless ambient environment, the whole architecture of how we use software has to change, right? I mean, the traditional app ecosystem, the backbone of the smartphone, it feels like it's facing an existential threat.
It absolutely is. Why would you navigate an app when you can just state your intent? We are moving from interacting with apps to interacting with autonomous AI agents.
And we need to be clear about that term. What makes an agent different from a really smart chatbot?
A chatbot answers questions. A search engine finds information. An agent acts.
It's proactive.
Highly proactive, highly adaptive. It doesn't just respond to one query. You give these systems a high-level goal, like plan my business trip to Singapore, and it devises the plan, it executes the actions, it monitors for problems, and it adjusts autonomously. It doesn't just answer, it acts.
So going back to a financial example, instead of an AI just flagging a fraudulent transaction for a human to look at.
An agent could autonomously freeze the account, contact the person affected, start the security investigation, and alert the right teams. All without a human doing anything until a final decision is required.
That level of autonomy has to require a pretty sophisticated engine underneath.
It does. It requires multimodal AI. This is the engine of the screenless future because it lets the AI perceive the world more like we do. It combines and processes multiple types of data at the same time.
So text, visual data from a camera, audio from a microphone, sensor data from a wearable, all at once.
Exactly. Models like GPT-4V or Gemini 1.5, they can do this. They can analyze a visual document, listen to the tone of your voice, process sensor data that says your stress level is high, and then generate a response based on that whole mix of inputs.
Which allows them to anticipate what you need before you even say it. That's vital for this ambient idea.
It's everything. And if the AI is doing the work proactively, then the whole job of a UI designer shifts radically. You're no longer designing for a direct operator, someone clicking and typing.
You're designing for goal setting, monitoring, and intervention.
The interface becomes about establishing a command and partnership relationship. A good agent interface has to make sure you understand what the agent is doing, why it's doing it, and give you clear controls to guide it, override it, or correct it.
Because trust is the foundation.
Trust is everything. But designing for this new conversational UI is filled with huge challenges. Designers who are used to the complete control of a graphical user interface, a GUI, they're losing that control.
With a GUI, you define every button, every path. With an LLM, the user can say anything. They might use slang, a complex request. And the LLM's response is itself a bit unpredictable.
Right. So designers are spending way less time in tools like Figma, mocking up screens, and way more time in this complex art of prompt engineering, of tweaking the models to guide the AI's behavior. It's a constant cycle of experimentation.
And on top of that, there's what our sources call the conversation trap.
This is a huge one. Designers have to stop and ask a really simple question. Does this task actually need to be a conversation?
I can relate to this. I tried to use an AI to reschedule a dentist appointment last week. After 10 back and forths confirming the date, the time, the reason, I realized it would have been 2 clicks on their website.
That is the perfect illustration. For so many common structured tasks like booking a flight or adjusting a photo, using text commands in a conversation it's harder and more error-prone than using a good GUI.
It's that if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail problem.
Exactly. And this recognition is leading us to what seems to be the most promising solution, a hybrid UI approach.
So the user declares their intent in natural language.
But the system replies not with a wall of text, but with familiar visual or interactive elements.
So I tell my spatial glasses, find me a hotel in London near the theater district next month with a rooftop bar. And instead of a text list, it projects an interactive map, visual previews, price filters, all right there in my environment.
Exactly. This is the concept of intent-driven shortcuts. The AI takes your natural language command, it translates it into structured data, and then it presents you with personalized, actionable suggestions. It turns a command into a guided discovery.
Okay, so despite all this confidence about the screenless future being inevitable, the road there is already littered with some pretty high-profile failures.
Oh, absolutely. The sources point out that the first wave of dedicated AI hardware really exposed this massive gap between the concept, the hype, and the actual implementation.
We saw huge investment in 2023. This screen killer narrative was everywhere, and these first products seemed like they were going to change everything, and then they just fell flat.
The two big examples are the Humane AI Pin and the Rabbit R1. The Humane Pin, co-founded by former Apple execs, promised this revolutionary display-free experience with a laser projected onto your palm,
They raised $230 million.
based almost entirely on that pedigree and promise. And the Rabbit R1, this little handheld agent, it also had booming pre-sales.
So what went wrong? I mean, they were touted as the future, but everyone quickly started calling them semi-finished products.
The failures were very specific and very technical. The Humane Pin had critically poor battery life, and that laser UI, its main feature, was almost unusable in any kind of bright light. So outdoors or in a lit office, it was basically useless.
Okay.
And the Rabbit R1, it relied on these large action models that just broke down when trying to do real-world multi-step tasks. It struggled to navigate complex websites, turning an automated task into this frustrating exercise of repeating yourself over and over.
So the concepts were good, but the execution just wasn't ready for prime time.
Not even close. The hype was based on the concept and the founders, but the tech itself was easy to replicate and hard to perfect. They prioritized marketing over making something that actually worked reliably, and they quickly became expensive electronic waste.
And beyond just hardware failing, the bigger challenge as these agents become more autonomous is the trust crisis.
Yes. Trust in these autonomous agents, it can't be assumed. It has to be earned through really rigorous, accountable design.
Because an agentic AI, one that acts on its own, introduces really serious reliability concerns. Hallucinations, misjudgments.
New security vulnerabilities. If an agent books a trip to the wrong city or freezes the wrong bank account, the consequences are immediate and real.
Which means governance is completely non-negotiable, especially in regulated industries like healthcare or finance.
Absolutely. The governance frameworks have to be built on transparency, accountability, fairness, and safety. And for security, these agents introduce totally new ways for bad actors to attack a system. You need zero-trust architecture, constant adversarial testing. It's a whole new ballgame.
And a key piece of building that trust, especially in medicine, is what's called transparency and explainability, or XAI.
Right. The agents need to have comprehensive logs, audit trails of every decision, every action, what data it used, all of it. Users, especially professionals, need to know how the AI arrived at its conclusion.
It can't just be a black box.
It can't. In a high-stakes field like an ICU, for example, Ambient AI is being used to filter all the overwhelming data coming from a patient. But the doctors and nurses have to understand how the early warning system reached its conclusion. Was it a heart rate spike, a drop in blood pressure? Otherwise, they'll just start to ignore it. Transparency is what prevents data fatigue.
And beyond trust and reliability, there are these profound, long-term ethical questions being raised by this proliferation of really competent generative AI.
Yeah, a huge concern is the cognitive decline risk. It's the classic use it or lose it principle.
If the AI is doing our complex, creative, intellectual work for us, the skills we don't use will just degrade.
We've already seen it happen with things like penmanship or spelling or doing arithmetic in your head. The long-term worry is that our creative skills, our ability to synthesize ideas and form critical arguments will suffer the same fate.
If the AI is always there with the most efficient, most adequate answer, do we stop developing the intellectual muscle to find the truly novel, maybe inefficient answer?
And that leads directly to the risk of accepting mediocrity. If we achieve what they call an adaptation level to our circumstances, basically, we get comfortable with what's easily available, we could lose our drive to be truly creative.
We might start to believe that products of, middling creativity are better than they are, just because they were produced instantly.
We get comfortable with humdrum, replicative creativity because it doesn't require any struggle.
And finally, there's this subtle but growing issue of intellectual ownership.
We're already seeing this in schools and in the workplace. People are starting to claim intellectual ownership of things AI generated, viewing their prompt, their simple command, as the creative act.
So they lose that sense of guilt or shame over using non-original work.
Because they genuinely believe it's theirs. They commanded it into existence. This blurs the line completely. Is using generative AI plagiarism? Our laws and our social norms just haven't caught up yet.
It confirms that this isn't just a future concern. It's already fundamentally changing how we think and what we value as creativity. The technological solution to one constraint is creating a whole new set of human constraints.
So the fundamental transition we've discussed today is, well, it's massive. It's historically significant. We're moving from the screen as a source of information and constant distraction.
The thing that commands our focus 144 times a day.
Right. To an invisible, proactive, multimodal partnership with AI agents.
And the key battleground isn't the quality of the display anymore. Micro-LED might be the ultimate screen, but it's arriving just as the screen itself becomes irrelevant. The real competition now is the interface layer, how we talk to these systems, and most importantly, how we establish and maintain trust.
For you, the listener, what this shift means is that the core professional skill of the next decade is going to change. You'll need to prioritize understanding intent and contextual awareness over just memorizing where to click in an app.
You'll be defined by your ability to clearly set goals for an agent, to monitor its work, and to intervene effectively when you need to.
The smartphone era was defined by its efficiency, but it came at the cost of our focused attention, pulling us off task for 23 minutes at a time.
So if ambient AI succeeds, if it creates this hyper-optimized world where the AI always chooses the fastest, most optimal path, the challenge will be whether we lose our capacity for serendipity.
That delightful, non-optimized detour, that unexpected surprise, that piece of information you stumble across when you choose the scenic route over the most direct route suggested by the machine.
Are we ready to give up the accidental discovery, the beautiful detour, and the unplanned, inefficient moment of wonder for the sake of ultimate optimization?
That is the crucial design question and the human cost of the screenless age.